I welcome you all to today's session on career in analytics, roadmap and skills required with the latest trends in analytics by MBAtrek. Most of you sitting here tread at the name of analytics due to your perception about analytics being linked to hardcore coding and the jargons that you come across. Well, today's session will clear it all for us. We are delighted to have Mr. Abhishek Srivastav and Mr. Akshay Agarwal with us. Mr. Abhishek Srivastav is currently the CEO and co-founder of MBAtrek with more than 12 years of experience with Apple, Accenture, and Trinity Consultants. Mr. Akshay Agarwal is currently the Associate Director of Axtria with more than 12 years of experience with Absolute Data and Google. Now, without wasting much time, I'll hand over the stage to you, sir.
Okay. Hi everyone. Good evening. Actually, it's late in the evening, and one loses sense of time when you sit in the office all day and don't even step out. So I think we're really happy to be addressing you today. I'm actually personally very happy that someone as senior and seasoned in the analytics space like Akshay is going to be addressing, and I'm having the honor and the luxury to actually initiate this conversation with him. I think as all of you go through this discussion, we will stop at moments in time in between. Absolutely feel free to ask questions. I think that's the way to look at it. Let's just make sure that we don't have a situation where we miss asking a question that we want. There is no silly question. The silly question is the one which was not asked. So please take the opportunity to put in the questions in the chat window. I think all of you will use Zoom, so just press Alt-H and use that. I think key thing, just basic webinar rules. I'm sure all of you have been doing this and experts with this. So just so that we stay on mute. Yeah, please keep asking questions to us. We'll stop on logical points. So we will not necessarily have a situation that there is Q&A right at the end. We will have time at the end also for Q&A. Palak, just for my clarification, it is 1 hour, right? We have 1 hour from now.
Yes, sir.
Right. Okay. And we will try to stay within the time frame. Yes. So I think with that, I think as a company in the education space and sort of education management skilling, I think we're very excited to be part of the sort of IMAC event at Convectus and addressing this very key topic. Analytics is obviously a space now which is maturing very quickly. The career paths are becoming more and more accelerated. 5 years now down the line or 7 years before, if somebody had the same webinar, we would probably not have enough content enough to talk about. But I think now we do have very seasoned professionals like Akshay going to address all of you and sort of clear the air on what is analytics, what does it take to build a career there, how do I grow in it, what does life look like being in analytics, and what is life after analytics. What do people do after this as well? What is the long-term career goal or game per se? I think the background is all there for all of you. I think if Akshay, you can sort of take 2 minutes, sort of give a small piece about your background and how it's been life in the analytics world.
So thanks, Abhishek, and thank you to the entire IMI team. This is really interesting. It's a first for me as well, and I really love analytics so much that I'm more than excited to even talk about analytics. And before I begin, I just want to set the context out straight here. Guys, I know all of you've part of MBA. All of you've attended a lot of lectures where you've just sat and heard people talk. Some of you at the back benches would have probably gone off to sleep. So let's not turn this into one of those sessions. I want this to be as interactive as it can be. I've been one of those back benches that has gone to sleep. So let's make it interactive. Any questions that you guys have, stop me in between. Feel free to ask anything that you want to ask, even if it's as basic as what do I need to do to get the job. So feel free to ask whatever you want to. A bit about my background. So yes, I did my graduation in computer science engineering And yeah, that's typically what most of us do. Way back in 2007. And then I was fluctuating between doing a master's in the US or looking at companies here, but I didn't want to go into the tech field. So while I did the computer science engineering, the coding world didn't really appeal to me. So I didn't want to join the Accentures and the Sapiens and the Infosys of the world at the moment. So while I did have an admission in one of the US universities at hand, the opportunity to work at Google also came along. And that's where I then decided to start my career. So worked at Google for a couple of years, went for an MBA, focused on the marketing aspect of MBA. Finance is something that goes over my head. So I stay away from all the financial jargon, focused on marketing. And at that time, I don't think analytics was that big a focus. I think there was hardly one class maybe that, we would have studied basic regression, everything, but not really anything specific on analytics, one maybe SPSS class. And then when the company started coming, so that's where the conscious choice, that's when I made the conscious choice, because I didn't have a tech background. So all the tech companies that typically come to MBA colleges were not an option for me. Sales was a big option, but I didn't want to go that route. I didn't want to get into hardcore sales. So a lot of the FMCG, CPG companies, a lot of the retail companies went out of the picture. And analytics was just starting out then. So there were a few companies that had, established themselves as Mu Sigmas of the world. And there were some of the smaller companies. Absolute Data back then was still a smaller company, but the work always interested me. So in fact, I remember Absolute Data was the first company that I interviewed for, and I got it. And you know how place comms go at MBA colleges, they were very particular. You will not get to interview anymore, but I was more than happy to. So spent close to almost a decade at Absolute Data, and have recently, interestingly, in times of COVID, made a switch to a company called Axtria, which is far more focused in terms of the industries they cater to. But overall, yeah, that's a bit about my background.
Cool. Great. So I won't belabor you with my background. I don't have an analytics background. I was a consultant all the way through, and I don't think people want to hear a consultant speaking too much on this call. So I'll move ahead from there. I do hope everybody can see the screen and hear both of us speak. You can just say yes.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay. Cool. Perfect. So just so that we don't just talk to the wall. I think so. The agenda for today is we'll try to cover 5 big areas. Who are the major industry players and sort of an overview on what's the action happening everywhere. Obviously, the second question is what everybody wants to know. How do I crack a career in analytics? Right. So Abhishek, you can spare me all the gyan, but please tell me how to get a job. And Akshay. And what does it take? So I think the third question is therefore also important is how do I rise in analytics? How do I build a career? And I think then the fourth question comes into play is, okay, great. If I had a career in analytics, what happens after that? Where do I go from there? The last one is what we call the bonus round. I think hopefully we will have time and we'll cover that, which is what is trending in the world of analytics in terms of what's happening in different industries and how they're using analytics and the COVID effect. I think that's something that as very smart top tier MBA students, you need to be absolutely on board of that. So I won't expect if I was an analytics hiring manager and Akshay is one, he will tell you that if you don't give a good answer there, or if you don't have a strong opinion there, you're not going to be on somebody's shortlist from a job, internship, or whatever you want to call it, right? Opportunity standpoint. So with that, I think we just move ahead. So looking at the analytics industry, I'll sort of build out this slide and then I'll have Akshay sort of talk through it. What we've done is we've tried to break it up. So there is what you would call the pure play all-rounders, which have been around for a while. These are the hardcore analytics firms whose bread and butter and everyday thing is analytics. They're actually consulting firms and analytics firms together. So they combine actually both worlds together. Then within this, there is a subset of people like Axtria, which are hardcore into a particular sector. So in case of Axtria, It's big into the pharma sector, and obviously pharma is everybody's cup of tea at this point. Um, then comes sort of, I think, the newer entrants, and I had seen this rise in Accenture, where a lot of the consulting companies are trying to break bread in the analytics world. So the Accentures of the world, the BCG, the McKinseys, either they're acquiring companies or they're opening their own analytics practice or divisions or whatever you want to call it. So
or poaching
or
from the
poaching
top
or
rows.
yeah, or poaching. So consulting companies are pretty aggressive by nature, so they poach, yes. And Akshay will have stories about how he has lost team members to consulting companies. Then I think analytics is taking another view, which is outside the service providers, which is the top FMCG slash healthcare companies slash CPG companies are building own in-house teams, pretty large teams, pretty strong teams. And analytics is actually emerging as a business process slash a department. It's not a team distributed across sales and marketing and operations. It is one monolith. It is one single team which sits. There is obviously the new age companies, the new age ventures, the Oyos, the Amazons, the Flipkart, the Ubers, and all the big companies of the world, which are fast growing, where, and probably Amazon is more mature, where analytics is also a core part of the business, right? It's a slightly different view from the typical MNCs, right? So this is sort of the landscape, just in a nutshell. And Akshay, your thoughts and views on this?
Sure. So as you guys can see, there's no dearth of the number of companies or the job opportunities that you have in today's market. As Abhishek rightly put it, there are these hardcore companies like the ones that I've worked for in the past. And we say all-rounders is because they work in various industries. So they would be doing retail analytics, they would be doing customer analytics, they would be doing telecom, finance, banking, every kind of analytics. And some are better in some industries, some are better in the others. Then comes in companies like Axtria, and there are some of the others, we've just put in one, for example, let's say ZS. ZS is world's number one pharma analytics company. Axtria is again huge in pharma. So we've got close to about $100 million business. Every single dollar of that $100 million is coming from pharma industries. We just don't do any other kind of analytics. And yes, as Abhishek mentioned, I remember in the early days, so a lot of our clients were in fact consulting teams. So McKinsey used to do a lot of work. ZS themselves used to do a lot of work with Absolute Data. Accenture used to do a lot of work. Slowly, what they realized was, what they've done is a hybrid structure. So Accenture will still reach out in certain cases to the Fractals and the Absolute Datas and the Mu Sigmas of the world. What they've done is they've built a core competency. So Accenture will say, my core competency is going to be, let's say, IT analytics or FMCG analytics. If there is a project on FMCG analytics, I will hire the people who are going to do that piece. And we don't need any external partner. But sometimes, or let's say, one of the other aspects that Accenture has done is a lot around data management. So building of data marts, creation of data lakes. So data management, Accenture will manage on their own. But if there's certain other cases, let's say there's certain dashboards that need to build, maybe there's a customer segmentation that needs to be done. So smaller part of the big project is when they will still loan it out to, you're the pure play all-rounders like Absolute Data and Fractal. So a lot of projects that I have started doing in the last 2 to 3 years are in partnership with these consulting entries. So which again is why initially when I used to say I'm a part of an analytics firm, nowadays everybody says we're part of analytics consultancies. We're no longer a company which will just do 2 plus 2 and come back and tell you it's 4. We tell you what's the advantage of this number 4. How do you leverage the 4 to get ahead in the market? And that's why it's more about consultancy. And that's why consultancy and analytics have kind of become a very merged bubble. And on the bottom, as you can see, so again, for these companies also, we saw initially they were investing millions and millions of dollars in reaching out to us. Over course of time, they start to realize, I can hire the people to do this work. So a lot of these companies, again, they do follow a hybrid model. Abbott does a lot of the analytics works themselves, but they will still reach out to an absolute data or a fractal or a mu sigma to do some of the competency work which they are not that strong in. But from an MBA graduate opportunity perspective, this is a big world out there. When I started out, this is probably 1/10 of the number of brands that you see here. Yeah, let's move on. Okay, so the key part is, how do you really become industry ready? How do you come into analytics? And I've heard a lot of questions, and even today at the start of the discussion we discussed about do I need to know coding? So I always classify skills into two aspects: a good to have and a must have. Now, a coding skill is a good to have. You might know R, Python, C++, HTML, whatever coding skill that you have. It's a good skill to have. But when I was hired, I didn't know any coding, right? Never worked in a tech industry yet. Had done computer science engineering, never worked in a tech industry, didn't know how to code. I didn't know how to even write a single Java code, but I was still hired. I go out and hire lots and lots of people who don't come from a background of coding. You don't even need to be an engineer to get hired into the industry. So while it's a good skill to have, what becomes are your softer skills that become more important. Your ability to transform a question into an analytical problem. Solving it is where the code comes in. So the code or the coding aspect is the means to mode, right? So it's the way you will reach the solution. But can you formulate the problem? Those are the kind of questions people will ask you in an interview. They will try and understand, can you turn a business question? Let's say my business question is very basic, I'm launching a new product in the market. I don't really know how well it's going to do. Let's say I'm Pepsi and I want to launch a masala Pepsi flavor tomorrow in the market. What is my market size? Am I going to do really well? Who are my potential competitors? What kind of sales can I expect? I don't really know anything. And that's when I will reach out to a consulting or an analytics firm. Now, how do you transform that business need into a data-driven analytical question is what we want to try and understand from you. Do you have that knack? Once you've done that is when the coding comes into play. So as you can see on the slide, it's about building those logical structured thinking. And a lot of the questions that people typically would ask you in a lot of these interviews is about, how many cars pass through a toll gate in the Gurgaon Expressway area. So that's where we don't look for an actual answer. I don't want to know the answer is 5,073,432. No, I want to see how do you structure that problem? How are you trying to reach that number? That number can be 5 million, 50 million, I don't really care. So it's the structuring of the problem that becomes important. The second aspect, which is very, very important, and it's becoming more and more important, is to understand the professionalism aspect of it. All of us are moving for colleges, and we've both, Abhishek and I, have been in college. We know the college life is really very different. But the moment you enter a corporate world, it's a whole new ball game altogether. There are certain, for the lack of a better word, there's certain codes and etiquettes that you need to follow. So are you ready to make that switch? And a lot of people are able to judge that from the way you hold an interview. Are you professional enough? Do you have those skills? For example, let's say being proactive. Are you proactive enough, or are you somebody who I hire and let's say I don't give you a project for the next 3 months, you'll also be happy sitting idle? I don't want those kind of people. I want people who will, if they don't get on a project, will do some sort of self-learning. So those are the kind of skills I will look for on your CV. What did you really do? If there was 1 year you didn't get a job, were you really upskilling yourself? Or if there was a 3-month break in your first year and second year, what did you really do? Did you learn a hobby? It could be as simple as, I learned how to play the guitar. Shows to me that you're proactive about something. So that's where, having those corporate qualities becomes very important. And industry awareness. Yes, always when you go for an interview, read up a little about the industry. You might not know the terms and the terminology, but you should still have basic awareness about the industry. So these are what we say is what makes you ready for an interview, ready for an industry. Some of the other qualities, again, the ability to collaborate and lead. team, working in a team in today's world is very, very important. Yes, there are lots of companies that still have IC or individual contributor roles, but if you can't work in a team, you're not going to go up the top. It's the ability to work and lead a team, right? Everybody has to be an MS Dhoni. You can't really survive in a corporate world if you're very individualistic. Thinking outside the box, that's a very, very important key in analytics, because analytics is still nascent, right? There are, let's say, on a scale of 1 to 100, there are only 20 things I know about analytics today. There are still 80 things I don't know how to solve. Every other month, my client comes to me with a business question that's new to me. I don't know how we've solved that before. So I can't just Google it and find the code to do it, or find the analytical approach to solve that problem. So the ability to think outside the box becomes very important. Analytical budgets, while analytics is starting to become a big pillar of any industry, analytical budgets are always constrained. So that's one, again, aspect where you need to think outside of the box. So overall, these are what are the qualities, the softer skills, as I like to call them, where we look for when we try and hire somebody, or where we say that somebody is ready to be a part of an analytics industry.
So Akshay, if you don't mind, I'm going to add a little bit of the consulting angle to this as well, because as you rightly said, there is a huge section of consulting which is entering into analytics. I think Akshay was kind enough to say, read up a little bit on the industry. I would actually say industry awareness is critical beyond. And I think a lot of you have analytics as a major in IMI. Am I right, Palak, and the team, and Shreya? I think you have a specialization, right?
Sir, we have a minor specialization.
Minor, okay, that's fine. Even if you have a minor, the point is about analytics as an industry and the target set of industries which are hot for that particular company. I think there is no excuse as a smart MBA coming from a top tier campus to not know anything and everything about it. I think all the information is available everywhere. It's all publicly available. Most of these companies that you're going to be interviewing or working for are all publicly traded companies. So all the information is available, right? And I would actually go back and say, you need to know the latest and greatest which is happening in the analytics world. Also, what's happening in their clients' industries also around analytics. I think there is no excuse not to know that, because in consulting, that was a big piece for us. What is the level of industry awareness? Because see, over a period of time, though we have slightly a different world with the COVID world, even now, clients are also very smart. They no longer want generalists sitting in front of them. They don't want young, smart MBAs sitting in front of them and giving them gyan. Those days are over. Those were the McKinsey days. All that stuff has changed now. They want very smart, relevant, industry-centric people who have a viewpoint on the industry, because that is why they are paying you money. They have their own internal strategy teams and corporate strategy and business strategy teams. They want people who are telling them things about the industry which are forward-looking, which they don't know about, or which is new, or which is emerging. And these companies who are putting these the front line in place will not want people who are necessarily just generalists, right? Because it takes a lot of time and effort to upskill someone right now. And trust me, Akshay will also tell you, the amount of training that goes now into the corporate world has dropped like anything. Like when we started our careers, like 14, 15, more, probably even earlier years back, companies were willing to spend 6 to 8 months training you.
I think 6 months we were not billed. The companies were basically picking the cost for us. Intensive instructor-led trainings. It was like a mini college after the college. Now we don't have that kind of pockets to be able to do that.
I mean, and especially if you go to newer age companies and startups, probably the only training you will get is, please don't do anything illegal or immoral. And this is the finance training. This is how you file your taxes. This is how you get your salary. And that's it. Thank you so much. Here's your mobile. Here's a laptop. You can go now. That's as much as training you will get from a lot of companies. Everything else is on the job, right? So I think, as I said, from a top tier campus, and from the backgrounds you all come from, I won't expect anything less, and I think the industry doesn't expect anything less, right? And especially now, I mean, in a COVID world, the hiring that is going to be happening, there is not going to be any margin hiring. So it's not like I only need 3 people, but I'll hire 5 people because I have a great relationship with IMI.
Yeah.
I need 3 people. I will only hire the best 3 people for that, right? So because industry is constrained, I think both of us will give you that opinion that cash flows are tight. As much as large the industry or the company is, it is not so straightforward. The hiring will not be so straightforward next year or this year, either on internships or final placements, right? So we need to make sure that we're completely relevant. At this point, Akshay, I think we'll just take a small break because we've spoken quite a bit. Are there any pending questions, any thoughts around this? Anything that you want to, anybody wants to ask? You can sort of put it down in the chat window. Give you all a minute. Anything which is coming through?
So, we have a question in the
One
chat
question.
box. Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, I was on mute. So Om has a very interesting question. He says, how to balance ongoing MBA academics with learning analytics from scratch? Akshay, you want to take that view?
Sure. See, balance between any kind of studies is always a tricky solution. You can't really compromise on either. What I would say is, from the analytics aspect, try and focus on the basics for now. You don't really need to do 10 courses within each kind of analytic. Let's say you're learning R. Learn the basics. You don't need to go into an advanced level and everything. If I'm going to hire you, you know the basics. That's already a tick for me. If you know the advanced R, doesn't really move the bell too much for me. So it's more about doing the basic courses. There are lots of these websites that are available on site that give you a lot of courses. Pick any one of them, start doing this. Let's say Coursera, for example, it's the most famous one. Pick a course and do them. Again, as I said, it's a good to have skill. So you want to learn analytics, learn the basics, understand what is regression, understand what is logistic regression, learn what kind of analytics we do, basics of R. Don't go too in depth, because some of it you will still be taught in these industries. Yes, far lesser than what you used to know or what you would have been earlier, but you would still be taught. And there's a lot of on-the-job learning that happens. And it's not that much of a delta for an interviewer when you come and say, you know what, I've done 5 courses in R versus somebody who comes in this, I know the basics of R, I can write a code. So I would say just focus on the basics of that aspect. But again, MBA academics can't really let that go down, right? I'm sure some of the companies have milestones. If your CGPA is less than that number, you don't even get shortlisted. So please don't ever compromise on your MBA academics.
Yeah, and I think another thought around this, especially, I'm taking a general MBA view because we are helping a lot of campuses. There is this absolute mania around certificates. So everybody is filling a nice bag of certificates on Coursera, on Unacademy, Upgrad and whatnot. But the challenge is, and I've actually done so many interviews, when you actually ask them about that certificate or that course, you're extremely shocked about the answer that you get. There is actually no learning, and there is no practical learning, right? And one of my favorite things, and I have a lot of respect for KPMG, but KPMG has the Six Sigma course. Everybody does it. I don't know, it's like the best course on the planet, right? But the thing is, when you sit someone down and say, okay, here's a manufacturing problem, tell me how you apply Six Sigma, and people are just like, I don't know. I can tell you what Six Sigma is. I don't know want to know what Six Sigma is. Can you help me build the solution of what a Six Sigma project would look like? And I think that is extremely disappointing from an industry standpoint, when extremely smart MBAs who have done what is a very touted certificate course, and you start peeling the onions, and you're like, There's nothing. It's like buying a packet of Lays of 10 rupees, and packet looks that big, but by the time you look in, that's the amount of chips you get. It's really disappointing. We've all been there, right?
Yeah.
You just get treated with a lot of air, and that's not good at all. So I think suggestion is less is better with a lot of quality.
Yeah.
Right? I think the quality aspect is very critical. Whatever time you spend on analytics, obviously Akshay has mentioned it much better. The basics are important, but your ability to apply the basics should be very strong. Right?
Yeah, I think Palak and Rishabh, two people have asked a question, and I think I'm gonna kind of combine them together. So for the benefit of the others. So they want to understand more about the problem solving approach, or the analytical approach that we have, the thought process, and isn't algorithms a part of it? So Palak, no, algorithms are not part of it. No, ideally, again, I'm not going to say no one. Ideally, no interviewer should be asking you about algorithms. They can ask you if you know what regression is, etc. But then nobody should be asking about algorithms. When I say problem solving approach, let me give you a brief example. So let's say if today I ask you, for all the students in IMI, estimate the number of buttons on their shirt who are attending this webinar right now. Right now, how do you structure this problem is the problem solving approach. So for example, and again, I'm not going to go solve the case for you, but just to give you an idea, you'll talk about males versus females, the kind of options that males would have in terms of the clothes they wear. So a t-shirt would have an X number of buttons versus a shirt would have X number of buttons. Girls would wear multiple kinds of tops. Hardly any of them would have buttons unless somebody's wearing a shirt. Since we're taking this from home, the chances of wearing a formals goes down, versus if I was doing this in IMI, most of you would be informal, so the number of buttons goes up. So that's the approach now to the problem. I'm not asking you for an algorithm. So that's the kind of approach that you need to have towards solving a business problem. Okay, in terms of resume filtering, isn't it better to have certain skills and certifications because recruiters usually search with such keywords? Again, as I said, it's good to have. And when you're doing this off campus, it'll become slightly more important versus when you're doing this on campus. So in on campus, if you have, you would get selected more on the basis of the kind of interviews, or let's say I'm assuming you guys still have group discussions or some kind of aptitude test. So you would still get selected on basis of that. But if you're talking more from an off-campus aspect, unfortunately, yes, a lot of the HR folks in companies tend to do a keyword search. So again, you don't need to have the art certification, but if you say art, that's more than enough. They don't keyword for the word certification. They will just look for R, or let's say linear regression, or let's say logistic regression. They're not going to look for the word certification. Again, that's not how HR would work. Okay, I see. Let me see. There suddenly lots of questions are coming in. Let's say what's people. If we learn only the basics and corporates have minimized the training, so what can we do to make sure I'm ready to be in the field? I think this is something what Abhishek and I initially discussed, right? So how are you ready? You see the slide that's in front of you, and you see the left hand side. Industry awareness, very, very important. That's how you become ready. So if let's say ZS is coming to interview you, be aware of what's happening in the pharma world. Or let's say if a Fractal is coming to interview you or coming for placements in your college, be aware of what CPG, what FMCG industries are going through. How is analytics, AI, machine learning, what is happening in the latest world. So be up to date. That's always the case. Second is if you've not done and again, we didn't have specializations in analytics. Nowadays you guys have. So even if you've not done the specialization in analytics, you still need to know the basics. So do you know what regression really does? Do you know what correlation really does? Don't give me the formula. Don't tell me what is the the formula for regression, y is equal to beta x. Tell me what's regression used for in the industry. How will you use it? I don't need to know the code. So again, those things, go through basic courses. Even in fact, a very simple Wikipedia search on what linear regression is and how it's used in the industry, you'd be ready for the first cut, and then start reading up more. So see, in today's world, self-preparation is very important. Don't ever just rely on what you've learned in college. Being ready, being prepared is very, very important.
I think I'll add something to the specialization piece, Akshay, if I can. I think as an MBA, if I'm hiring you in any industry, I expect you to know all the specializations very well at a base level, right? Because, for example, if I'm a all-rounder pure play analytics company hiring you, or even an Axtria hiring you, right? Axtria will not, if a pharma company comes to them with a supply chain problem, they're not going to go and say, sorry, I don't do supply chain work, right? So if you don't know supply chain, and if you're going to be like me and Akshay and say, I'm not going to do finance, you're going to get stuck somewhere, because there will be a cost optimization problem which will come through. There will be something around asset management which will come through. So you can't say that I don't know all my specializations. Knowing the specializations, also knowing the basics, and that's why you will notice in your MBA curriculum, the first year is the core courses, and the second year is the elective, is common essentially, is because that is hygiene factor. If you're going to disregard that, I think you're going to put yourself into a lot of trouble. Forget analytics, any industry in general, because when they're looking for an MBA, they expect them to know all the key business processes, because you may not be working in that business process, but you'll definitely interact with them somewhere down the line. And if you don't understand how they work and what are their challenges and what is required on their end, you're a very one-dimensional person, and an MBA is not a one-dimensional degree, right?
And let me give you an example also. So not just from interacting with those people, right? Once you, let's say you start to grow, let's say forget analytics, let's say you're a department head in Deloitte. Any department head has to manage his P&L. So he needs to know basics about finance, about people optimization, about resource optimization. He will also have to figure out a way to market his team. How are people going to know what is he doing? So he still has to do some sort of marketing there. He will have to do analytics of his team. So finance, marketing, analytics are also becoming a part of your daily life. And the other aspect is the people you interact with. So today I'm sitting in, let's say I'm sitting at Apple and I'm the brand manager for Apple, and I go and I will meet marketing heads of other companies. I will, as a brand manager, interact with an analytics head because I want to do some analytics for Apple. I can go in front of him and say, boss, मेरे को कुछ नहीं आता है, ठीक है? I know 1 + 1 is equal to 2, rest you have to do. That's not gonna how it's work. I also have to go and meet a director of analytics. I need to know some of my basics. So as Abhishek rightly said, the basics, the core becomes very, very important. So that core always has to be there.
Okay, I think in interest of time, let's move ahead. We do have quite a bit of content to cover. So I'll build out this slide, Akshay, and then we can sort of present this to us. This is essentially what would be the generic career path for analytics. And so Akshay, I think you can just talk through and talk about where you are and how does one progress?
Sure. So as you can see, the first couple of levels are where typically we would hire freshers. So engineering graduate, a commerce graduate, an economic honors, stats graduates, everybody can apply for analytics. You just don't need to be an engineer. That concept's not there. So they get hired at the fresher level, which you see as the business analyst or an associate, and those nomenclature will change across teams. Typically, in most companies, MBAs do get that slight kick and would get hired at the next level, which a non-MBA would take about a couple of years, 2 to 3 years to reach, which is the senior analyst, or in certain companies, they start as a consultant. In terms of the role where you will have to bring in that delta because you're an MBA is, again, problem solving in client interactions. So at the first level, you're doing core analytical tasks. You will be managing the data, writing codes, turning out charts, turning out insights. The MBA comes in, and the first two very basic expectations from an MBA is, boss, can you solve the problem? Again, what we discussed earlier, and client interactions. In today's world, whether we like it or not, our communication skills are the key. No matter what we say, I have seen people with great communication skills grow very, very fast. If you're able to talk to the client, if you're able to talk to your bosses, talk to people higher up in various industries, and convince them of what you're doing, there's no one stopping you. So that client interaction piece is why MBAs get hired, because we know you guys are people who've given thousands of presentations. Every subject you've done presentation 10 times. Today, if I'm going to put you in front of the client, you're not going to start mumbling and fumbling and saying, that's not what an MBA is expected to do. He's supposed to be confident, and you're going to deliver it at the click of your hands. And then your path starts to grow. So, typically another couple of years, 2 to 3 years, is when you become a senior consultant and you start to get people management, team management, project management responsibilities, where you will start to play dual role initially, where you will also be working on the project, but managing a small 2-3 member team. It's a big project, so you'll be leading 2-3 members who would be the fresher graduates or the fresher MBAs. Then you start to grow and you manage a much larger team, so which is like a 20-member team or a 15-member team, where client management becomes very important, where let's say, you're managing one single client. So if I'm, for example, when I was in Absolute Data, as an engagement manager, I was managing all the CPG clients. So all the Pepsis and the Cokes and the Mondelez of the world were my clients. Now, anything that happens on those clients, whenever they want to do any project, they approach me. I will help figure out what the costing of the project will be. I will figure out what management of my team will be. So that's the client management part. Then the next level, about more than a decade of experience, anywhere between 10 to 13 years, is when an associate director starts to come in. These are the people who will start to now have sales targets. You've done everything and you're managing a good 20, 30 member team. Now here's your sales target. Every quarter I'm looking for $1 million business or $500,000 business. It's more, but I still call them people as farmers. So you're still not reaching out to new clients. It's more about getting that business out of the existing clients that you have. So ensuring, and at the same time, you still ensure your product delivery continues to go well. So your project still has to be delivered well. And because it's gone well, you have to figure out opportunities where you can get more and more business because of that project that's gone well. Take that one level higher is where typically it's a director, or in certain companies, we start to call them principals, which is now they have a P&L responsibility. So every time they're hiring, firing someone, they have to maintain a P&L. Every time there's training happening, every kind of cost that goes in. So they're responsible for not just the top line, but the bottom line itself. So at the associate director, it's more the top line. I can continue to get revenue and I can hire 10 people to do those projects. But at a principal level, the bottom line also becomes important. And then is obviously, typically the senior director, 15, 16 plus of years experience, senior director, head of analytics, which is basically they're heading the entire firm's operational activities. Let's say could be director of India, director North region, director APAC, anybody. So this is how a typical hierarchical movement in most of the analytical firms would be like. Abhishek, could you just go to the next slide? Now, the key here is, and why I always say that analytics offers a big advantage, is that somewhere around that start of the middle level. So the first 2 levels are what I call as the entry levels, the intermediate levels. Then 4 to about 10 years is the middle management layer, and 10 plus is the top management layer. So when you're just entering the middle management layer, most of the companies offer you 3 tracks now, and we will discuss the 3 tracks in the subsequent slide. But it's important to know that that's where we'd initially discuss in the agenda. What if I want to leave analytics? What if not just analytics? So this is where a big advantage analytical firms have. So you're already doing analytics, you're already getting a flavor of consulting, and now I'm 4 to 5 years, 6 years into the company. The companies will offer you 3 more additional tracks. So look at the plethora of opportunities that analytics industries are now starting to offer to you. Let's go to the next slide. And this is where I will talk about 3 tracks. So the first track is an expert track. Now, an expert track is somebody who becomes an expert in their field. So let's say I'm an expert in customer analytics. I know as much as I can about customer analytics. I keep learning about new things. So what is the track that I would typically go to? I would typically be a part of a team or leading, eventually start to lead a team which does R&D. Every analytical firms these days have an R&D division because analytics is changing, right? Few years back, it was about big data. Now it's all about AI/ML. 3-4 years down the line, it's probably a new buzzword we haven't even heard today. So everybody needs to change. Everybody needs to learn. So who does that in a firm? Everybody can't do it. I can't have the entire 1,000 people of my company learning new things. So that's where these are the new teams that are set up. In companies they're called labs, in certain companies they're called R&D divisions. This is where the track will take you. So if you're technically oriented, you love coding, you want to explore, you want to look at new things, this is the track you'd go to. You focus on solutioning. One big aspect that's now become is product development. So see, another path that opens up. Product managers, managing a product is a huge career path these days. So this is where the expert track typically goes, and they're both IC as well as team management roles. IC, once again, individual contributors. Some of them would be individual contributors. They don't have to worry about managing people, managing teams, doing one-on-ones and appraisal meetings. All they're worried about is doing the work, right? So you have a mix of both roles. So that's the expert track we have. The next one is the project to client management track. Now, this is where the focus is on delivery. So as you start to grow in, and this is the typical path that I'd shown you in the previous slide. So, you start to grow in, you become an engagement manager, you're leading certain teams, 20, 30 member teams, your focus is on delivery, and you are typically called farmers. So you need to mine your existing accounts for new potential businesses. High focus on your people and team management skills. How do you have difficult conversations? I could come to you and say, boss, why didn't you give me promotion? How do you explain that to me? Or, you gave me a 2-on-5, whereas you gave him a 4-on-5. How do you differentiate those kind of things? So having difficult conversations, engagement of your team, keeping everybody happy, keeping everybody trained and moving along. Those are your skills that become more and more important as you start to climb the responsibility. And when you reach the top, P&L responsibility becomes a big aspect of the team. So you're managing a 30-member team. What's the inflow? What's the outflow of those team? And then the third track is the sales track. So again, close to 4 or 5 years, and you can decide, what, now I want to move towards the sales track. These are the people we typically call as hunters. Your focus is not on the existing client. So if Pepsi is already a client for Absolute Data, your focus is not on Pepsi. Your focus is going to get Coke. Maybe I want to get somebody else. So you have to look for new potential logos, as we call it. How do you grow the business? And you would be given stiff targets. So sales and BD people are defined by business targets, and your salary compensation would also be such. So there'd be a big variable play in it, that directly linked to how much of business you're getting to the company. Once again, these are in most cases, independent roles, or in certain cases, there'll be 2-3 member team, but you won't have like a 30-member sales team, everybody working together. Everybody has their own separate targets. You would obviously roll up to one guy, but as an individual, you're working individually and not teams. So those are the broad 3, tracks that analytics offers. And it's important to note that there's always an overlap between these roles. So you won't just straight away move from project management to sales. It'll be a gradual movement, will take about a year. One second. Yeah, okay. Sure. So, it's not that you would switch 1 year you're doing project management and next year you're going to be doing sales. It's more a gradual shift, and that's why there's a lot of overlap. So personally, I'd say I'm somewhere in that overlap between the project and the sales role. So I'm slightly moving away from project and client management, moving more towards the sales role. So I'm somewhere in that green overlap circle that you see. Any questions? I want to just pause here and, take any questions that people might have.
So I had a question.
Yeah.
So how difficult is to switch from one track to another? Like if I want to switch, what skills should I acquire? Like if I want to switch from an expert track to a client management track, what skills should I get? Like,
So typically, you would want to make the switch at about, as I said, about the 4 to 6 year mark. And then you make that switch, and typically you would want to stay. See, if you want to become an expert, it's very rare that I've seen that somebody who's been an expert track and is now leading an R&D team suddenly says that now I want to do sales and business development. So typically it's, you're starting out straight and then you start to branch out. So once you started to branch out, it's very rare that I've seen people switch, because as you said, you've not uh, cultivated those skills with the experience. So the cultivation happens in the first 6 years, and then the next 2-3 years of initial roles of an expert track or initial years of a sales and BD track. That's where you cultivate all your skill set, and then you start to leverage on them. So if I, after 10 years, I want to move, let's say you're 12 years into an expert track, and tomorrow you say, I want to move into sales and BD, I'm not going to make you director sales and BD. I might still make you manager sales and BD. So it's a slightly, downward, for the lack of a better word, a downward movement for you. But that can happen based on the skill sets.
Akshay, I think there are a couple of questions around analytics and HRM, and I think people, so I think there's, to what extent analytics and HRM are related, and I think the other question is an HR data analyst into analytics, or just HR field with more than one set of skills.
Okay, so HR analytics is different from just HR, right? Now, HR analytics is done by a lot of companies today out there who focus on analytics related to human resources. So the hiring, firing of people, what are the kind of work they're doing, the optimization, the management of people, the hours in office, etc., etc. So there's a lot of HR analytics work that a lot of very specific companies that do. As an HR data analyst, and if you get hired into those companies, you will have to develop skill sets related to that. You don't need to have the HR skill set. Now, an HR skill set, let's say you've done a specialization in HR, is completely different. It's more about understanding people. It's more about understanding what are the behaviors people experience or people show, the typical subjects that you study in OB and HR, what makes you click, stick versus carrot, those kind of things. So I would say, even if you don't know HR or you haven't done an HR subject, you can definitely still get into HR analytics. I would not say, as an hiring manager, I would not be worried about whether you know HR or not. Again, you would have done some basic courses in year one, and I would want you to understand what is human resources and where you come from, but specialization is not really required.
There is another question around consulting and analytics being connected. So what is the scope of analytics connected with other specializations and finance and marketing?
Yeah, so I think both of us can tackle this. Let me start with this. So finance, marketing, both are huge industries for analytics. So let me give an example. So let's say marketing, right? Who does marketing? Let's say Apple does marketing. Now tomorrow I've hired Ranbir Kapoor to do an ad for iPhone. I've given him a 10 crore contract and he's done few ads as a marketing. So now I'm the marketing manager and I've done this. 6 months down the line, my boss comes and asks, boss, you spent 10 crores on Ranbir Kapoor. Was it really helpful? How do I know? Now I will go to an analytics firm. So marketing reaches out to analytics to solve their marketing problem. Similarly, finance will do that. Loans, loan repayment, risk management, very, very important aspects of finance where analytics plays a big role. So all these HR, finance, marketing, sales, supply chain, so all the divisions that are there in a business, in an industry, all of them today require analytics to run efficiently.
Okay, I think
you want to add there?
I think from a consulting standpoint, I will add that Yeah, I think finance and marketing purely because these tend to be specializations, and I think supply chain. So, an Accenture supply
Yeah.
chain analytics was a very strong thing, purely because that was Accenture's bread and butter, supply chain, and that is where they gravitated to initially, where they did a lot of supply chain analytics. So, I think, yeah, if you're looking at these set of combinations, I think it's very good. I think there was a question around HR analytics, and I think now, because I speak to a lot of recruiting managers and HR managers, one of the big things that everybody is tracking right now is employee productivity and motivation. Because in a COVID era where everybody is sitting in a 5 to 10 inch screen and talking to each other, one of the biggest things that companies are worried about is how motivated are my employees and how productive are they. Because in a work from home setting, which is very new for the industry, most people are, most managers are actually very uncomfortable with the productivity of their teams. In fact, even Akshay will tell you, it's one of the things which is top of his mind. And even for someone like me who runs a startup and a new venture, how do I make sure my team is engaged and happy and wants to work every day? Because they're waking up, sitting in the same place, wearing their pajamas, listening to their parents, and or dealing with life in general. And then they go back to sleep. They watch their Netflix in the night, sitting in the same place. They wake up in the morning, they sit again in the same sofa, and nothing changes for them, right? And I've had people break down in front of me saying, can I come to the office? Please open the office. I don't care if I get COVID because I can't live life like this. I'm sitting in a tier 3 town somewhere where nothing happens. I'm asked to sleep at 9 o'clock. The internet stops working after 10 o'clock in the night, right? And these are very real world issues. While we may all laugh thinking about it, but that is what a lot of managers are dealing with right now, right? So yeah, I think that's something um, that's something I think which is critical, and I think that's a key piece for all of you. Do remember that whatever hiring will happen will happen on a 10-inch screen. So yeah, so this is how the hiring will happen, right? So you have to give the best version of yourself sitting in front of a 10-inch screen. It's
And
very different from doing a face-to-face interview or discussion and all that.
yeah, and let me tell you a couple of cheat codes. And this is not related to analytics, but since the focus is hiring, and I'm going to give you a couple of two very basic cheat codes. One, when typically you get asked in an interview, tell me about something about yourself. What are your hobbies? Uh, Talk something that's passionate for you. Talk something about what you really feel for. Don't just make up answers. Oh, I like to read books. Half the time, people you're talking to might know names of the books, and they will start questioning you and realize you're just faffing. So it's very important to talk about yourself. Be open. I've always said that. If you don't have an hobby, and if your hobby is just YouTubing, be frank to me. You know what? I really don't have an hobby. I just like to spend hours on YouTube. That's okay with me. But don't faff about things that you haven't done just to sound intelligent. And second, uh, don't ever stress yourself out. The interviews and any job is not the end of it all. No matter if your answers are correct, if I see you stressing in an interview, and I know interview is only 1/100th the pressure that you will face in the corporate life. If you're going to stress here, then I'm pretty sure that you will struggle in the corporate life. So even if you're sweating, figure out ways to pinch yourself so that the sweat doesn't show on your face. But if I see any candidate who stresses on questions, you don't know the answer, you know what? I don't really know. I haven't done R. I don't know Python. So yeah, unfortunately, I can't answer that. Be open, but don't stress, because the ability to take pressure these days is a very big quality that everybody looks for.
Yeah. Okay, I think we'll just move ahead now, Akshay.
Yeah.
But just a few things to cover. So I think this is the next sort of big thing, which is, let's say, okay, I've spent a few years in analytics, probably as an undergrad or even as an MBA. So what do I do next? Where do I go next? So we've tried to bring you the answer in 3 areas. So you could go to the industry, you could go for further education. Some of you may want to go to startups, and I think Akshay, do you want to share some quick stories about sort of your background and
Yes,
people you know and
so
how they've done.
I've lost people to all three sectors. I think education is one that I've lost a lot to, because a lot of the engineering graduates, when they come in and they spend the initial 3-4 years, they suddenly realize that the MBA graduates tend to get, you know unfortunately or fortunately, the MBA graduates tend to get that slight leeway because of their ability to converse with clients, because they can present, because they have that slight edge over a graduate. So a lot of the graduates tend to leave for an MBA. So that's something that's typically what I've seen a lot happen. Startups, yes, startups have been the buzzword in the last, what, almost a decade now. Everybody wants to join startups because it's quick, fast money, and everybody gives you 40-50% hikes, 100% hikes. All I always say is, money is good, and yes, everybody has their own reasons for switching a job. Just don't choose a startup for money, because startups come with them with a lot of pressure. Choose startups because you're passionate about the work they do. You can join an Accenture and still be, even if you're not passionate about the work Accenture does, you'll and I shouldn't be saying it, it's not politically correct, but you'll still do 5-6 years, 7 years in a company like an Accenture or let's say the Sapiens and of the world. But if you're joining a startup, it's a smaller company, you get found out very quickly. So you need to have that passion to want to work and to want to learn, because startups are not going to spend millions of dollars in 2 months in training you. You will have to do everything together and yourself. Learn yourself, do it on the job, work on the job, create presentations, present also, travel to the client side also, talk to your bosses also. At the same time, suddenly 2 years down the line, you'll see you will have to manage people also. So everything happens quickly. So if you're not passionate about it, you get burned out very quickly. So I've seen a lot of people join startups, and then 2 years, 3 years later, they've come back to Absolute and say, like, you know what, we've had the flavor, we're happy being in the industry. And the first one, again, a lot of poaching happens in analytics. We've now started putting NDAs in our contracts when we start hiring, when we get new logos, that you can't really hire people or, things like that. But yes, it's a plethora of opportunities there. So when I decided that I wanted to leave Absolute and look out, half of my clients approach me, you know what, join us. You can work in marketing, you can work in sales, you can lead the analytics division. And again, as we said earlier, you don't just get to join the analytics division there. You can join the sales division. You can join the supply chain division. In fact, some of them wanted me to join as a brand manager. They're like, you have so much knowledge about the brand. If you look for a brand manager, nobody has as much knowledge as you do because of the years you've spent doing analytics for this brand. So you're the right guy to take on as a brand manager as well. Then consulting firms, obviously a big option. E-commerce giants, again, I tend to club e-commerce and startups, but here, we just kept them separate. E-commerce, most of them are startups, offer lots of money. Again, just be a little careful of, where you go, how you go. Do it only when you're passionate. I had lots of people, again, politically incorrect, but I had lots of people who joined OYO, and then lots of people who left OYO very quickly. So just be careful of when you're looking to join the e-commerce giants and everything. But in terms of opportunities, as we said, the world's your oyster. You can go wherever you want.
Okay. I think last piece that we have, and I know we are approaching the top of the hour. Actually, we approached the top of the hour. Akshay, I think if you do want to talk about what you believe are some of the key trends around the different industries and with analytics in play.
COVID's had an impact on everybody, right? All of us sitting here, we've had an impact on COVID. What COVID has also taught a lot of these companies is that analytics is even more important now. So pharma, biggest, and what we've done is we've given you an idea of the business problems that COVID has brought up and why they're reaching out to analytics companies. Forecasting, suddenly the sales of certain drugs have shot up. Now they don't know how much to produce. What if I produce so much and then suddenly next month nobody's buying it? So how do you forecast the right amount of sales? And why do you need to forecast? Because I don't want to result in my inventory suddenly lying at a chemist shop or a hospital and then everything going to waste. So the right amount of forecasting is very important. Patient analytics, how do I target the right patients? How do I target the right doctors? Well, I know this kind of a doctor who prefers this medicine. How do I target the right hospitals? That's become a big aspect of pharma. Pharma industries are probably the only industries apart from, let's say, online deliveries that have continued to grow in COVID. So they have huge budgets available to them, and they want to spend on analytics these days. FMCG, CPG, suddenly some brands saw their sales shot up. So things like Coke, juices, canned juices, suddenly their sales shot up. Now they don't know how to manage inventories. Some still want to understand, let's say biscuits, chewing gum, their sales have shot down because chewing gum was always an impulse buy. People, when they went to shops, they had 2 rupees left, they'd rather buy 2 rupees of chewing gum. Now they want to understand, what do I do? How do I target people? What is the change in people's purchase behavior, shopping behavior? That's where again analytics starts to play a role. Hospitality, I think that's self-explanatory. You know the kind of losses hospitality seen because of COVID. So now everybody wants to understand. They want to do targeted promotions. I don't want to just give a 50% off to everybody. I want to give it more to people who I know will definitely go for it. There are certain kind of people who want the 50%. There's certain kind of people who want the free spa. There's certain kind of people who would want dinners with their room packages. So understanding what works for people so that they will make that conversion more quicker. Logistics, route optimization. I just don't have budgets to have my trucks go everywhere and deliver. I need to optimize. Less number of trucks, less number of drivers are available to me. So I need to optimize. And obviously then digital payments. EdTech is a big industry. Abhishek's one of the leaders in the EdTech, I would say. So he knows, he's using analytics, to try and understand how to, and it's not just from a business point of view. You just don't use analytics to get more revenue. You're also doing analytics to optimize where you're spending, to optimize your current work. And that's why analytics has grown 3-fold, 4-fold in the last few years, because it's not just about revenue anymore. It's about both top line and bottom line.
I think one thing that I'll add to this is the supply chain angle is very critical. We were in a era of industry where everybody is saying centralize your supply chain. Now in a post-COVID era, everybody is saying decentralize the supply chain. Yeah. Because what you don't want is your material lying in one place and you can't service the rest of the locations because they are in lockdown, or the materials can't touch other hands. So for 20 years, the entire world said centralize everything, centralize everything, centralize it. We all centralized it. And then as nature would always do, it proved us to be absolute idiots and said, sorry, you have to decentralize now. Right? So I think for a lot of people who have the operations in the supply chain background or are looking at that specialization, I think there is a lot of work there. And I think as you pitch to companies, and I'm a big believer that people from your background should look at off-campus opportunities. There are a lot of companies which are hiring, which are not coming to campus, right? Yeah. And I know I may get a little bit of ire from the placement committee, but you know what? There is nothing wrong in finding companies or opportunities or startups where you could invite them to come to your campus, or you can speak to the founders, connect to them on LinkedIn, and maybe pitch to them to say, hey, listen, I love to do a live project. I love to do a summer internship with you. Yeah. Or summer I would love to
short-term projects, anything.
Yeah.
I started my career in fact, I did not, I made a conscious decision of not sitting for my campus placements when I was doing my computer science engineering. I said, I'm not going to sit for these placements. I'm going to look for the job on my own, because I didn't want to do the kind of work for the companies that were coming in. And I got through Google. Google was never going to come to my campus. So, I think Abhishek rightly put it. And yes, the key is always going to be prepared. And I think that's Abhishek's tagline also, to be prepared. So that's always the key. If you guys are prepared, if you go well, learn some of it. Even if you don't have the certifications, most of us don't care. If you know the basics, if you can problem solve, we're more than happy to hire you.
Okay, I think with that, we're pretty much done. So any parting questions at this point? I know we've crossed over the allotted time. So Palak and the rest of the team, if there are any questions, we're happy to take them at this point. And we'll let you decide how to proceed here. So we're done from our end. We covered everything that we had wanted to talk about.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much for the insightful session, sir.
Okay.
So there's one request. Can we please have a photo with both of you?
Okay.
And,
So
yeah, and in the meantime, if somebody has questions, they can write in the chat box.
Sure. Okay.
So,
So what do? I just stare at the camera?
so
Yeah.
you need to
Do
stop
you
sharing
want
the
us to do
screen.
this?
No. We want you to stop sharing the screen first. Then we
Oh,
can have
you need to stop. Okay. Sorry.
Okay.
Okay. Is that better?
Yeah, all the participants, we request you to please switch on your camera. We want to see some, fresh faces, not some tired smiles.
Yeah. Anybody wants to do, you can quickly do it before they take the picture.
Sir, it's done. Thank you. We have taken a picture.
Okay. I could not taken my breath for any time longer.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Good. Wonderful. Thank you so much, everyone. I think Palak and the team, are we good to go? I think should we?
Yes, sir. So it was very insightful, the session.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate all your questions and time. We'll share the presentation with you. Our contact details are available. Please reach out to us at MBAtrek, and obviously me and Akshay both are on LinkedIn. We do request that sometimes we'll be late with responses. As you can hear, both of us have children, and life is not so straightforward right now. So we are balancing everything in life, but we will give you an answer. So do be patient. If you send an interesting question, we'll come back with an interesting answer, but might take some little bit of time, right? So take care, everybody. Thank you so much. Thank you for spending time in the evening. And yeah, best of luck.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Very much,
sir.
Thank you very much from the entire IMI team, entire IMEC team. I think all the juniors, the seniors also, they got a really insightful session because it was really interesting to know, deep into the analytics and the career outside. And I think they will really benefit. And so this is a thank you for everyone from us.
Great.
Sure,
Thank
great.
you, everyone.
Don't step
And
outside though.
hopefully,
Don't go outside without a mask.
stay safe, and hopefully I will get to see some of the faces in my company soon.
Yes, sir.
Sure, sir. Thank you very much.
Sure,
Take care.
sir. Thank you.
Take care, guys. Stay safe. Bye-bye.